Who invented aeroplane? American brothers Wilbur Wright, 16th of April 1867 to 30th of May 1912, and Orville Wright, 16th of August 1871 to 30th of January 1948, also known as the Wright brothers, were considered to be the pioneers of aviation, for they inventing, building, and flying the world's first successful motor-operated airplane, the Wright Flyer. After researching the design of the wing as well as the flight of the bird, Leonardo da Vinci made a design of man-powered aircraft. A controlled flight glider was experimented by John J. Montgomery. Some more inventors also developed the same machine, like Otto Lilienthal, Langley, etc. During their childhood, the Wright brothers' experience with a toy helicopter sparked their interest in flying. After high school, the brothers designed and built their own printing press and started printing the newspaper. Wright brothers became skilled in the mechanism by their long experiences with machines like cycle, motor, or printing press in their own workshop. They were inspired by their long experiences, especially with cycles, and from here, they got an idea of balancing as well as controlling the flying machine. While working for the printing press in the 1890s, once they came across the news as well as saw the pictures of new machines like gliders that were operated by Otto Lilienthal. The first important and successful event of the flight was done by Samuel Langley, who was the secretary of the Smithsonian Institution. With the help of many other men, he experimented with several flights of gliders. Moreover, these events, especially Lilienthal's death, inspired the brothers most for their invention. The last event of glider flight, as well as the death of Lilienthal, influenced the brothers as they cited that, after this event, they became serious about their research of flight. In the same year, they began their mechanical and aeronautical experimentation that was based on the works of some earlier scientists like Cayley, Lilienthal, Leonardo da Vinci, etc. However, they were impressed by the experiments of Lilienthal, as before any motor flight first they should master the art of flying with gliding practice. But another death of Pilcher by gliding changed their thought that for a successful flight, the control of the pilots on their machine is an important part. Since they considered Lilienthal's strategy of practicing the glider was right, but they also noticed some faults in balancing and controlling. To find a better way as well as the solution to this fault, they experimented and made their first aircraft, a small biplane glider. They started their work by trying to understand how they should design wings in order to enable flight. The Wright brothers gave their lots of time in observation of the flight of the bird. They observed that during their flight in the sky, when the air flows over their curved wings, that makes them able to lift and they could fly. Finally, with all their experiences and observations with a cycle as well as birds, like how to control the cycle during riding and how birds take their flight and change their direction, the Wright brothers found out the proper way to fly an aircraft. They used this technique of wing warping for their successful flying with the flying machine. They used the technique of bird's wing and built their own biplane as well as tested that by flying in 1899. After the successful test of this plane, the Wright brothers tested and built a full-size biplane in 1900. The brothers made their biplane on the basis of some earlier inventors' work in the 1890s. They chose a remote location, Kitty Hawk, for their glider testing, as this was the favorable place for flying as well as doing practice. Their tests in Kitty Hawk were successful with their 50-pound glider. They had tested their flights in both manners, unmanned and piloted, and it was the first piloted glider. After the successful test of the first piloted glider flight, the brothers made some more new improvements. Then in 1901, the brothers built the biggest glider of 100 pounds and tested it at Kill Devil Hills, North Carolina. This testing flight with the biggest glider was not successful due to many complications in the flight as well as in the glider. Despite their disappointment with their unsuccessful attempt, they re-examined their attempted test and decided to make some new improvements in order to make the machine fly properly. For their experiment, they built a tunnel and done several tests on dozens of tiny wings. After the tunnel test, they did several flight tests, and they became clear about the importance of wings with large and narrow in size. This discovery of the wing shape made them able for a further successful test flight. He said that it was the most important and successful experiment in history as it took little time as well as little material. In 1908, the brother said to the Century magazine that all the earlier facts about flying were not reliable because all the tests based on that were a failure, so they were wholly dependent on their own developments as well as experiments. After that, the Wright brothers did so many tests, as they flew numerous test glides using their new glider during 1902. When they became successful on their test based on their tunnel experiment, they decided to develop a powered aircraft. And finally, they experimented and developed a powered Wright Flyer in 1903. So for a successful flight, they needed a slop-like track. It took 2 attempts to fly the machine, in which one flight resulted in a minor crash. After repair on 17th of December 1903, the brother makes 2 flights. In 1904, Wrights built the Wright Flyer II. After several testing flights and minor damage of the aircraft, they took a longer flight ever than before as they fly 4,080 feet, 1,244 meters, for which they take only 1.5 minutes time. By the end of the same year, they take 2 more successful flights. In 1905, the brother built a new airplane, the Wright Flyer III, and made its maiden flight on 23 June, but after a fatal crash on 14 July, they rebuilt the Flyer with some modifications that improved stability and control. After these long and successful flights, they became ready to manufacture flying machines for practical use, as now they could make it commercial. Rejection, criticism and acceptance of flying machine. The brothers offered to the government of Britain, France, and Germany to sell a flying machine, but they did not accept. The reason behind this rejection was that the Wright brothers never demonstrate their flight publicly in order to escape from news reporters, as well as fears of the competitors stealing their ideas. Got contracts for flying machine. In 1909, the Wright brothers gave training for flying to defense officers with their purchased plane by the government. And then it was the year 1912 when the brothers made the first fighter plane, loaded with arms like machine guns, etc. Got patent for flying machine. Further, the Wright brothers wrote their patent application themselves in 1903, but it was rejected. After that, with the help of Henry Pullman, they got the patent for their flying machine in 1906.